So I'm sitting in Mark's glider, but it turns out I can't fly it. I was going to fly it today, but it's all fallen in a heap, and it's making me think about the regulations and the lack of independence in gliding. So I did my sailplane pilot license over a month ago, but the administration didn't allow it because apparently they need 11 days notice, and we only gave them 7 days notice, which is what we thought. So yeah, 4 flights, sitting around in the heat, a lot of organisation. The guys at the club, they messed it up, I guess, but they do a lot of stuff and they have to deal with a lot more administration than I do, so I can't complain. So then, before I came here in August, a couple of months later, I decided that definitely I needed to let them know 11 days before I came. So when I'd been here a few days, I was told that actually I had to give another 11 days notice because we thought it had been done the first time around, but it hadn't, and it needed to be done again, and all this administration stuff. And the problem is I won't be here then, so I won't be able to get my SPL license probably this year, which is a bit of a downer. So the medical was supposed to be the hardest part, but there's more layers of administration, it turns out. And that's the reason why I can't fly this glider today, because the club made a policy that you need your SPL to fly it. And that's the main reason. I mean, the SPL is good because I can fly in other European places. But the reason that probably wasn't going to happen this season anyway. I mean, I flew with a German club, but it didn't matter that I had the SPL or not. Mainly it was just so I could fly this aircraft. But then the club policy was actually not made because of the insurance, which is what some people thought. So they said, yes, actually we can make an exception, because they read through the insurance with some help of some Germans, because it's German insurance last night, and they said, yeah, it's actually okay, there's nothing in there, which means that I won't be covered because I don't have the SPL. Then they thought they would just double check with the owner of the aircraft last night, and he obviously had trouble sleeping because this morning he came to me and said he's worried about not damage to the glider, but if there's any liability, if I hit some other people in the midair or whatever and kill them, and then they come for not as a glider but as his house or something. So I thought that was covered by the compulsory insurance that is part of any time you want to fly in France, you have to get this insurance, and so did Fabian. He seemed to know more about it than me. But that didn't convince the owner, and the owner, it's fair enough, he was told of this at late notice, and he's worried about these kind of things, but he doesn't want to have, the guys at the pub said it would be okay, he wants to see the written information, but he's chasing up his German insurance, which for me is not really relevant because it should be covered by the French insurance anyway. But then it's one of those things where if you've got 2 insurances, is that worse than having no insurance because neither one want to pay because they want the other one to pay? But I don't think it works like that. But it doesn't really matter what I think, and it's making me think again about the main problem with this sport is the liability and the legal stuff. So first it was the Class 2 medical, which I waited the best part of a year for, and basically it meant I couldn't fly solo at all last season. And now it's the SPL thing. So yeah, it definitely is arguments in favour of getting something like a Swift or a lightweight glider that is slightly less regulated because it's free flight. That's one of the main reasons, is that you can make the hand rudder modification yourself without having to get any certification, and you don't need a Class 2 medical, even though I've already got one now anyway. I might not have it always for some reason. And the other reason is that you can self-launch, and that really makes things a lot better with liability as well, because if you launch yourself in a paddock, even if you're doing it illegally, there's not really anyone that you need to be implicated in that and to take liability for it. But if you're gliding at a gliding club, then if anything happens, then they potentially are liable. So it's just a lot more complicated. So flying is always a trade-off between the time in the air and the time on the ground. Like, it's great to have the freedom of flight, but on the ground you've got the opposite. You've got all the paperwork, basically. And hopefully your aircraft weighs less than the paperwork. So it's always been a trade-off between those two and picking which is the best in terms of flying and which is the best in terms of all the stuff besides flying that goes along with it. It's a real shame because it seems like this sport is perfect for disabled people. A lot of people have put a lot of work into it with legal dramas and all the certification stuff and all that kind of stuff, but it still seems pretty impossible. And I had a pretty big leg up. I was already involved in a club that has a really good setup. I already knew how to fly. I'm disabled, but I'm still, relatively able with a lot of things. There's a lot of things going my way. I basically had years and years to dedicate to this project, where I didn't have to work and I could move to another country and I could just spend unlimited money on whatever I needed to spend it on. Not everyone has that option, but despite all these advantages, it's been so difficult, and it makes me think that, like, obviously I'm thinking, is this worth it? Should I try another sport? It's pretty awesome, but it's pretty ridiculous how difficult it is. So it's a shame. It's a shame. And I know Europe is one of the most regulated places for this. But that's the other thing, like, at least if you get it sorted in one country in Europe, you're kind of okay for the other countries. But every time you change the jurisdiction, you've got to start again, basically. And some jurisdictions are going to be easier than others, but yeah, with the paraglider, you just throw it in the plane and no one's the wiser. You're completely independent. So I'm thinking maybe some kind of sport where you can be completely independent is the best, even though as a disability it makes sense to do it as a club because there's always people to help you. It's the same as getting on a bus. Like, everyone wants to help you, but everyone's also worried about liability.